Hi Madeline, I am sorry that this is a video of my computer screen, but all of my friends and family were unavailable to help me out, so this is what I had to resort to. I don't have a roommate or anyone else to video it for me, but hopefully this will work and hopefully we're good. But I did a close reading of Cosmopolitan magazine. And as we know from many presentations, Cosmopolitan was first published in 1886, and it was a family magazine that included articles about fashion, cooking, and scientific breakthroughs and news, which I found really interesting because I did not know that that was ever part of their niche. They also discussed art and works of fiction. They actually had quite an emphasis on fiction writing until the popularity of television, the invention and popularity of television, and there wasn't a need to have a magazine really about fiction writing anymore. And then right after that was when Helen Gurley Brown, Gurley, I cannot say her name, um, took over as editor in chief, and she turned it more into the Cosmo that we know now, empowering single career women, and their focus became largely on sexual freedom, and sales began to increase after that. So the focus of Cosmo today, men, relationships, fashion and beauty, and then sex is a major component of Cosmo. Go. I don't know why it's not moving to the next slide. Here we go. Okay, sorry. Here are a couple of semi-recent Cosmo covers, and I conveniently circled for ya references both explicit and implicit to sex on the covers. As you can see, it's a major factor in their key objectives. And I chose a close reading primarily because when I signed up, no one else had done a close reading. So, in an effort to be different, and also I did want to look at what they were putting in their magazine because that tells you more about their values as a company and as a publication than really their advertisements. Because, yes, the advertisements are chosen by the magazine, and yes, they can choose to not run ads if it doesn't agree with their mission statement, but really they need to make money and publications cannot survive without advertisements. So it's really the content that they're creating that shows who they are. So that's another reason why I chose a close reading. And I looked specifically at the August issue of Cosmopolitan with Ashley Graham on the cover, who, as we know because of other pop culture media outlets, she is the first, quote, plus size model to be on the cover of the swimsuit edition of Sports Illustrated. She's also a Nebraskan. But what I find interesting about this cover is just Ashley Graham as a person, like as a role model. Her celebrity, if you will, is based on the fact that she is, quote, plus size, and that is literally what her entire Cosmo article is about. And while I think that it is fantastic that there were, quote, plus size, because I don't think this woman is plus size, women included, and that she's getting the recognition and the attention, I guess, that she is great because we need to acknowledge that there's more than one body type. Also, it says something about our society that we feel the need to discuss the fact that this woman is not a size 2 nonstop and that her entire celebrity is based around the fact that she's not a size 2. Because if we were just more accepting as a general population, this wouldn't be that big of a deal, but it's fine. I also found it was interesting that, well, seductive, so sex, so hot, how to keep the flame alive. And then the one workout thing on this whole cover is the best workout for your boobs, which are over sexualized, but you know, there's that. And one of the prompt question was how women should act, and the answer, according to Cosmo, is definitely sexy, because there's a sexy pose, sexy. This this article gives you suggestions on sexual positions, sex, sexy beauty all month long. So sexy nail polish, sexy perfumes, sexy, I think that was moisturizer. And then this is a spread entirely about mascara. There's not a single male pictured in this whole spread, but yet we describe the mascara as swiping on the sexy. It's blue mascara. My thought was it's blue mascara. I don't really care if my mascara's sexy. I care if it clumps and runs down my face on a humid day. Like, it's just unnecessary sexualization of mascara and nail polish and this girl that's just hanging out on her bed weirdly in high heels and underwear. And then also, Cosmo reinforces how women should act, and I know other groups touched on the fact that Cosmo kind of contradicts itself, because this article was about it's the absurdity of putting so much emphasis on our abs, both males and females, yet Cosmo consistently runs articles about how to dress to hide your abs or hide your bodies, like hide things that you don't like about your body, and workout tips on how to improve your body and diet tips on how to improve your body. So while they say, why do we care so much about our bodies? They're constantly telling us how to improve our bodies. So it's just kind of contradictory and not great, in my opinion. And then another prompt question was, what behaviors are rewarded? Well, according to Cosmo, anything that gets you a man is worth reward. Um, For example, as I touched on earlier, being sexy, decoding his behavior, understanding what's going on in your man's head will get you a man, which is what the goal is, according to Cosmo and our heteronormative patriarchal society. Fixing the problems in your relationship, not as a couple, but you as the woman fix the problem for your man in your relationship, because there was an article in this issue of Cosmo talking about issues in relationships and giving the woman suggestions on how she can fix it. Not any suggestions about what the couple can do, just what she could do. And as far as decoding his behavior, this entire spread that you were looking at on this slide says decoding his dating profile cliche. It's all about what your significant other male could possibly be thinking that he's not saying. And they run one of these almost every month, the Manthropology. I've seen one before where it's had like he's going out with the boys and then like all these options as to what that could mean and what he could actually be doing, which is just so ridiculous and is completely ruining countless relationships, because it's just putting these toxic thoughts in women's heads about how men are these like terrible cheating creatures and they're a complete mystery and you better lock one down. It's just like, more than anything, it feels like it's trying to scare you. But yeah, but you're keeping your man, and that's the goal, I guess. What behaviors are punished? And like I say on the slide, it's not so much punish in Cosmo, it's more ridicule, because in addition to the Manthropology spread, there is also always a spread where people share embarrassing moments, which some of them are legitimately embarrassing. Like, I walked in on my roommate having sex with somebody or something like that. Like, things that would actually be like, if they happened to you, you would blush and oopsie, my bad kind of moments. But some of these are also like, how is that embarrassing? One of the ones on this spread, I believe she's number 3. I don't think you can read it. Basically, her heel broke on her way to work, and she was super embarrassed and had to make an excuse as to why she had to run out to go buy flats. And I was like, that's not embarrassing. That's just unfortunate and frustrating and inconvenient. It's not so much like embarrassing or mortifying as Cosmo puts the impression that they want you to think that all these things are mortifying, but they're really not. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought is, why do they think this is so embarrassing? Because limping around on one heel is not sexy. So what they consider, at least from my reading Cosmo, various issues of Cosmo and years of readership of Cosmo, I think that it's not so much it's embarrassing, is that the woman is doing something that's not sexy. Therefore, we need to all commiserate with her and feel bad for her and kind of laugh at her expense a little bit because she did something that was not to lure a man. All right, so some of my key points, I listed some questions, which in the class they would have been rhetorical, but it's all right. How many women of color did you see, not including the advertisements? All of the articles, in all the articles about sex, sexuality, and sexual orientation, how many times did they say anything about the couples not being heterosexual? And how many times was another gender mentioned besides biologically male and biologically female? This kind of goes back to, and both of those last two kind of come back to intersectionality. And I went through the magazine several times and to make sure I counted. In this issue of Cosmo, there were 13 women of color, but only one couple was of color, or one couple had a woman of color as one of the people in the couple. But it's important to note that they were a same race couple, and they were both African American. They were both black. And none of the other couples were interracial or anything other than white. In all the articles regarding sex, sexual orientation, or anything not heterosexual, that only occurred twice. One was an article about a lesbian couple looking for a sperm donor, and another was about a woman asking sex advice because she was bisexual. And it is worth noting that neither one of these had a photo of any kind of a couple. The article about lesbians, about the two lesbians trying to adopt a baby or getting a sperm donor, those were two of their options. That had no graphic elements besides a photo of a children's toy, like a dial, where if a kid had it, you'd turn it and there'd be like farm animals or something. And when it landed on a certain animal, it'd make it like an animal noise. Except they were pictures of men, which I thought was interesting because if this had been a story about a couple not being able to conceive, a heterosexual couple not being able to conceive, odds are there would be a picture of the couple and the baby that they ultimately ended up having. But when it was a lesbian couple, there were no photos to accompany the article, which was interesting. And the bisexual woman's question was not accompanied by any graphic elements either. And then there were no mentions of anything other than biologically male or biologically female. No trans, no genderqueer, nothing. Nothing. No, no, anything. Nothing. It was just male and female, the end. Which I know maybe that was just this particular issue of Cosmo, but still. Not very weak intersectionality. Not a whole lot of intersectionality here. And then one connection does make the one quote that I kind of kept going back to in reading through Cosmo was the very first article we read by Barbara Reisman, where it says gender is so endemic because unless we see a difference, we cannot justify inequality. And I feel like Cosmo is playing into the justification of inequality a little because they are making such stark differences between male and female. Like, for example, males and females are so different that you need an entire spread to two-page spread to decode what your man is thinking and what he really wants and what he really thinks of you. You know, like we act like they're a different species, so of course there's an equality when you have media like that encouraging it. And then here are my sources and the credits for the template design brought to you by Slide Carnival. All right. Thank you so much. Hopefully this is okay, but it's all I got. Thank you.